All right, Jacob, let's take a look at your paper. Emily, format first. Everything looks good. You do not need quotes around your title, and I would argue that your title is eh. Um, so you start with the two kinds of people that are in there. I think this is a really good start to your paper. A lot of people obviously started with the quote, but you build to the quote, which I think is pretty good. The part that I don't care for is that you followed your quote up by just saying, this is a description of how life is a mysterious thing. I don't really think that's what it's about. I think it's about your topic, but I think it's about the despair that we feel once we realize the thing that we had is over. So I really think you need to follow that quote up better. It's a really good quote, but I think you need to follow it up a little bit better. Another thing to be careful of is when you have two complete thoughts on either side of a conjunction, make sure it's a comma conjunction. You have a couple of different areas here that you do that. Other than that, you have a really good, I think your thesis statement is fine. Not waste the precious time that I have with those I care about. I think is really good. That hopefully all these things are leading towards that. What you're missing are your main points in your introduction. So go back through and figure out how to add those main points in there right before your thesis statement. All right, so your first paragraph about your freshman year. Um, Again, be conscientious of the conjunctions, and you have complete thoughts on either side. I think that'll probably be the last time I bring that up, but there's a couple more errors even in this paragraph that are like that. All right, I'm not sure if you meant to be ironic with the rest of your topic, but looking back, that's kind of a really weird uh, simile to make, knowing that what's coming up is your grandma dying. So, not exactly sure if you meant that or not, but it is kind of awkward when you get to that. Her mouth was ajar, but there were no words. I think I'd rearrange that as well. You were in a trance, trance is what you want there. Now, here's something that is a little bit of organizational here. Okay, so you have these quotes here. Um, A, why did you think it was your fault and that you allowed it to happen? B, did you really think I'm so ignorant for thinking that nothing bad could have ever happened? This to me feels like more of a reflection that you want to make as the narrator to say, looking back, how could I be so ignorant? I mean, I think that's a better reflection because I doubt you really thought that at the time. Make sure you capitalize uh, the H and make sure you make this a question mark. This is a run-on sentence, so you want to fix that as well. Now, here's one thing too, and you're not the only one that's done this too. Your grandmother died, obviously tragic. I mean, I've lost 3 of my 4 grandparents, so I know how that feels. But why was it so, like, reflect on your grandma a little bit. Like, why was it so devastating to you? Was it just about death in general? Was it because you and your grandma had a special relationship that you're not telling us in this paper? I would just want to see more of that relationship and what that means to you. So that might be intriguing. I like that you end with this because it moves, I guess it goes back into your um, title, which maybe I'll retract my statement about not liking your title because I think it does work well. You do need a transition statement though to go from this paragraph to this paragraph. You need that sentence that links these two together and not just after my freshman year I went to my sophomore year. You don't want that, but try to think of a better or a way to link those. Very too, we don't want to use very in our writing, Jacob, at all. Alright, so first sentence here, stepping into high school for my sophomore year, the pain that I was going through slowly started to fade. Notice the capitalization mistake here, but also I think you need to rearrange. The pain I was going through my freshman year slowly started to fade during my sophomore year or something like that. But you still need a strong topic sentence because this topic sentence is again about losing somebody, but maybe you're understanding that loss or something like that. I don't know. So you talked about being banned. You met Ian. Ian's parents get a divorce. He's moving to Vegas, and then um, you accepted it. You had a great weekend together, and then you told him. Did you really tell him this, Jacob? No matter what happens, you just have to keep moving forward. So now you're the one dishing out advice that you were getting. Um, I don't think this lacks. I think this paragraph lacks the emotional weight that your last one. It's almost like you learned a really important lesson in the first body paragraph, and now the second body paragraph you're like, nah, people move, so I get over it, which is the lesson that you're trying to get through, and I understand that. But I think this emotionally isn't very as much impactful as your grandmother. So maybe find a way that to draw you and Ian together a little bit more in that paragraph and talk a little bit more about your relationship and your experiences, just like your grandma, in order to make it more realistic and real overall to your. All right, so now we get to your senior year and get to your parents' divorce. So, lots of good details. I was thinking comma, capitalize that. This is a run-on sentence. You want to fix that. So we get to the divorce and the D word. And then you get to, I like this simile, but make this all one sentence. I started feeling a painful pinch in my heart, like someone pulled it out and took a baseball bat to it. And I think you can even make some stronger language in there too, but I like that simile. You just gotta fix the sentence structure so it's right. So then you have your brother who's crying, who eventually is crying his eyes out. Your father loses his job. Your mother gets diagnosed with MS. So obviously, this is where I would, again, this is pretty darn emotional here, Jacob, and it just seemed like the end of the world to me, which is kind of a cliche statement to make, even though I'm sure it's true. I bet you could really add on to this and really talk a little bit more about the impact that it's having on you at this particular point. And then you get to your mom leaving, which is obviously pretty terrible for you. And live with your Aunt Tammy, I'm assuming is what you meant there. And then you have your brother. And again, this is where you have to keep moving forward. This is where I would love to see some reflection, because at the time, this is a really terrible experience, and yet your philosophy is, we have to keep moving forward. Like, reflect back on it. Like, I would reflect and say that at the time, this was terrible. It was blah, 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 blah. And looking back, now that I have a chance to look at it, it really still is a point in my life that is going to ultimately change how I perceive things from now on. I don't know. I just feel like there definitely needs to be more reflection in that paragraph. All right. So now you get to your senior year, and you get to some of this depression that you're feeling, and what it's doing to you as far as tugging you in all these directions. You're overworking yourself. You're overloading yourself. Watch for comma conjunctions. This isn't one, but there are a couple in here that you need to deal with. But make sure that your punctuation is strong. Anyways, so you go on and talk a lot about this. I think it's, for the most part, good detail, Jacob. I think there's probably some places in here that it could be a little bit stronger. What he did to help me somewhat cure my depression. I'm not sure what that means. It could be a little bit more descriptive there. There's your comma conjunction. A couple weeks passed, comma, and I was still feeling depressed. And then I was, the idea of regretting it later on. You decided to leave the jazz organ trio. And again, you can reflect back on it. At the time, I thought that was really the best idea, but I don't know. I realized I ended up hurting both of my friends, and I think you can frame this a little bit different. You eventually get there, because you get down here and they realize you need to apologize, so on and so forth. I just think you can streamline this paragraph a little bit better too. And I know you're trying to get page length too, but I think you can streamline it, add some more details. Now, you get to the end, this time, comma, though, I like to add, no matter what happens in life, you just have to recover from it and strive to come back stronger than ever. You don't need you can't use you. Change this point of view. You have it up here too. You'll lose a point every time you use that. But I actually feel like this is a better message. I like the idea of moving forward. But your reflection really is, I had to endure all these things, but I had to become stronger after I endured them. So I actually really like this as a thesis statement, and I think you can reflect better on that than your other statement. Alright, so it helps to become a stronger person. which is fine. Through the good and bad times, I learned that you cannot control nature. Again, we have yous in here that you're going to have to fix. Always know this about family and friends, so this should be like a colon, I would say. You will win some and you'll lose some, which is kind of a cliche. Make sure that in your conclusion that you restate your main points, sentence by sentence. You just have to go on and keep the best of the situation, which is fine. My feelings about realizing how utterly alone we shall be are over. So I like that you tied back into the quote, which is good. And then this is kind of a weak conclusion, that it's just made you the person that you are today. Go back maybe to your introduction where you talked about two kinds of people. Maybe say at the end, I've become that second kind of person that learns to deal with it. I don't know. One, your works cited needs to be moved up to here. And then all of this looks correct. So you're good on that MLA side. Just got to fix that formatting. All right, Jacob. You have the good bones of a paper. You just need to make sure that you streamline it a little bit, add some more detail, get rid of the U's that are all over the place.